as just a quick reminder, Bridget already told you, but we are so excited to have Terrilynn do a online class this Thursday and Friday, and you can still sign up for that. You can do it on her website if you prefer, or look carefully scroll through the homepage of the PPS website, and you'll see a box to click on where you can get that taken care of. Terrilynn, thank you so much for working with us and for making such a great show, pulling together a really interesting group of paintings. It was great to work with you. I'm going to let you take it from here as we start our demo.
For my demo today, the request was to do something to kind of lead into the workshop. So since the workshop, I call it Dancing with Stardust, but that kind of includes everything. And I consider pastel stardust because Carl Sagan talked about how all of us are stardust. We're all part of the universe. And to me, pastel is like that pigment that's crumbled and put together, and we create from this dust that falls from the sky. What I want to focus on this morning, it's not morning, it's afternoon. I'll get comfortable in a minute. A lot of talking, it's kind of tricky. Anyway, I want to do some value studies because in the workshop, we're going to be considering value and then a slightly different approach to color theory. What we're mostly used to is our classic triadic color scheme of red, yellow, and blue. And back in the 90s, I started working with an optical color scheme that is more closely related to the color scheme that we have with light. So if you take all of the pigmentary colors and put them together, you supposedly basically get black. It's usually a dark, muddy brown. But if you take all of light colors together, you get white light. And the color wheel for this is slightly askew from the other color wheel. And sometimes it gives us more exciting and interesting colors that we can use as we approach painting. There's a lot of you. Hi. You can see here I have 4 pieces of substrate ready to go. And I want to do a classic approach of different value schemes. And what I will do in mine is start with a very comfortable subject matter. And I have a favorite little tree that many of you have probably seen pictures of. So if we look at something that we're familiar with, I'll put it up here for the moment. This is the little tree that I love to paint. This speaks to me emotionally, and that's partially why I'm drawn to this one so much. It's on the Maine coast. You can see here it's in winter. This tree is about 20 feet tall, and it has survived nor'easter storms, winter, people coming through, breaking branches. Its heart is ripped out of it, but it still survives, and it continues to grow and give joy to everyone that passes by. I was there last summer and spoke with a gentleman, and he said that he comes out every year to photograph this tree in the process of its becoming. So you can see that I lay it out according to basic hues, and then from shades down to my tints. And you can also see I have a number of different types of pastels in here, and I'll talk more about this during the workshop. But I have every thousands to, I'm getting feedback on someone, sorry. Townsend and Terry Ludwig's. I have some homemade pastels in here. I'll talk about that later. For this exercise, I have picked out and planned ahead some colors. Over here, I have my pan pastels. I use these a lot for underpainting. It's a great thing to have. And here are some of my other tools. I have the only fixative I ever use, if I use fixative, will be Lasco. It costs between $30 and $35 a can now, but it lasts a couple years, and I use it very sparingly. Clear Shield is a skin protectant that I use on my hands. It's aloe and silicone based, vitamin E, and you can't feel it on your hands, and it protects you from the pigments. Water, and I have 2 alcohol sprays. One is a misting spray, and the other one is a looser rough spray. If you watch any of my YouTube videos, you see that I really like to play around with my pastels, and often I turn them almost liquid, especially in my underpaintings. For the exercises here, I have chosen some value ranges of simple colors. My color scheme, over here, is basically the yellow greens, the purple blues, and the reds. So I basically have a triadic color scheme going on. Sometimes I'll use an analogous color scheme, a family of colors. Sometimes I use complementary. So you can plan ahead your color scheme. And this one is a triadic. So you can see, if it focuses, my greens, my purple blues, and a hint of red. That's going to be my accent. This is for painting, if I get through it, a little later, more complete painting. We'll talk about that. So as I'm starting out, we'll do the first one. This will be kind of a typical painting if you were going to do my little tree. I know this tree very well. I've painted it a number of times, as any of my participants for workshops or my Patreon people will tell you. And I've become so familiar with it that I almost don't have to think about what I'm doing when I paint it. So because I'm familiar with its structure, I can focus on other elements as I'm painting. I lay in quickly the basic ground. This is vine charcoal. If you have any little quick questions, you can ask or put comments, and Kathy can read those. Just vine charcoal, and I lay it on the side. I was taught to use the largest tool possible for as long as possible. So that's why you often see me lighting this whole thing on its side. If I were going to do a typical painting of this, I know it's a dark green tree. I'll throw in some dark green in the shadow areas. I want to add in some mid-tone greens. And what I'm after in my paintings is the essence of the tree, of the subject. I try to do that with figures or landscapes, still lifes. What am I trying to say with this? What do I want people to notice? And in this case, it's the tree, and the energy of this tree, and the fact that the winds have been blowing it and they're very strong. Because I want this to be a little on the wintry side, I have stayed with those yellow olivey greens. Again, side of the pastel, I can cover very quickly large areas of my background. And I keep varying the marks. Sometimes I lay the whole side down. Sometimes I'll if this were the paper, sometimes I'll tip it up or back or forth a little bit. Get some sky shining through. I'm drawing around little things. This is some cracked off branches. This side is a little hard. So what I often do is I'll switch hands. And by drawing some or painting with your opposite hands, you often get different marks. It's not always the same. And that can add interest into the painting. Switch up the color. I'm still staying in kind of the same value range here. In my left hand, I usually hold a rag. mostly that's because if you go in a light color into a dark color, you're going to pick it up on the pastel. Can you see that okay? Right? And you don't want that. So you don't want to go with that dark piece and go into your light sky again. So you want to wipe it, keep it clean. Plus, when you put it back into your box, it's clean, it's ready to go, and you don't have to go once a month and clean out your whole box. Saves time. A little more light here. In front of this tree, and I just know this because I've visited this little guy so often, there is a snow or a sand fence. So I can just, using the thinner side of the pastel, put some uneven fence posts in there. Because this fence is not brand new either, and it's been falling down. Gets pushed around by snow, and the snow plow comes by and pushes things over. I'm going to add a little, I just touched the side of the pastel up there. And I'll send out the picture when it's done, because I know over Zoom you're not getting a high quality image here. But I will take pictures of this and send this out to go with the video. I'm just a glaze of that red to keep this painting tied together and in keeping with itself. That helps the eye to keep moving around the image, color-wise, design-wise, every element. I like to think if I took each element apart here, like that light blue by itself, that it would create an interesting design. The purple by itself, some sort of interesting design. So try to consider that. So everything together is working for the good of that painting. Over here, we're going to now go, if you have a value scale, and this painting went from some of my darkest darks to some high values here, to my lightest lights. This one, I'm going to focus on high key. So even though I'm using the vine charcoal to sketch this in, notice I'm keeping a very light touch to get the feeling that it's going to be light. So my dark, I want to stay within this range, and I don't want to go deeper. This is a nice card, because, is there a question? It's okay. You can pick this up and hold it beside your pastel. I also took pictures of the pastels I showed you before that are on my palette chosen. And I took the picture, and then I took out all the saturation, so it just became black and white picture, and I could check the values that way. Sometimes it's hard to see when the colors are there. So if you can take the color out, you can often see what the value is. So I'm going to keep going here. And I'm basically using the same color for all of these quick little sketches. Background. I'm using the same colors, but this is going to be my darkest. So by staying in and double checking, staying in with this value range, choosing your colors out of your main palette, and double checking by going black and white on those to see if you are in that value range. And you make adjustments at that point when you have that black and white photo. You can maintain what you're after in a high key painting. This one I did underpaint it with some pan pastel to give it a lighter effect, because I was on a dark paper. And what I'm doing, these are just really quick color studies and value studies before I go to do a completed full painting. You can do these quickly, 5 minutes. I was teaching a beginning pastel class the other day, and I made them do these studies in 5 minutes, and they freaked out at first, but once they were done, they had some dynamic and beautiful little studies. So be bold about it. Don't be too cautious. I think I'll bring in, it's too light, a little darker. Often you could just hold it up against the paper to see what the value is against what else you're doing. See, this works into this value range, but over here, look at the difference. You can just hold it there and see what it's going to do if you add it to this painting. So high key over here, bright, sunny, kind of hazy day because it is kind of grayish. Then we'll go here. We'll try to keep in our mid-value range. You hear how I'm including you on these paintings? We are going to do this. We are going to do that. I love it when we paint together, and it's like a community effect that we're working together. I love these branches that swoop up. There's things about tree branches too. The top of the branches are lighter. They're smaller. They reach up toward the sun. They're reaching out. These mid branches start out and the tips try to still reach out. But the bottom branches are very heavy and they go down and they swoop down. We have another exercise, which I'm considering if we have time to involve this in the workshop as well, is limited strokes. We did a whole exercise with my Patreon group on limited strokes. And we started with like 200, how fewer strokes you can do. 250 strokes of painting. You're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you count in, you start with maybe 250. And then you half that. Let's do it with 100 strokes. Can you still maintain the image and the feeling you want in that painting with half the number of strokes? And then half it again, down to 50. And it was surprising again, when you force people to do something, you say, you have to do it this way. You have to limit. And they ask you to do that. I'm not pushing them, but they say, yes, I want to learn this. I want to practice this. They surprise themselves on what they're able to do and what they can learn from such a simple exercise. Okay, kind of mid-tone. So this may be kind of a foggier day. This is a kind of bright sunny day. There's not as much light. It's still that softness. I don't blend very much, but every now and then you can blend a little bit. If I do, it'll be intermittent blending over the painting. So you can already see, here's a great difference in your value scale. High key, mid key, not a great painting, but it's there. I'm going to tilt this slightly.
Terrilynn, are you using any hard pastels or just all soft?
At this point, I'm pretty much all soft pastels. Good question. Partially because I can work them very quickly in a demo situation.
And this is on a pastel mat?
Nope, this is on sandpaper. That's a great question. I have found this sandpaper. It's a wet, dry sandpaper. Tell you what, it's a lot cheaper than you are. But it has the same way of using and holding the pastel. I don't believe it's archival. I don't really know. But it does take liquids, so that makes me happy. And it's good for demos and exercises and planning.
So did you spray the sandpaper black?
No, it comes that way. It's on, I found it on Amazon, actually.
Oh.
Actually, these two right here, I added a little light pan pastel and I sprayed with alcohol to wash it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I
different.
use this in my classes for people who are just starting out, and you don't want them to get discouraged from the price of pastels and paper and stuff, which we all know can get pretty pricey. So for those beginners, it's very encouraging for them to get the feel of the material without spending a lot of money to get going. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you cannot use water on that, right?
Yes, I can.
Oh,
I can use water. I can use alcohol. Let's texturize this guy up here. Okay, this is a misty day and it's beginning to snow or something. Now that's going to dry and we'll see what it does. That's alcohol and not water. Alcohol and water both work. But often on the right paper, the alcohol will push, it's wet in a spot and it will push the pastel particles out a little bit and leave an interesting little outline, an interesting texture. Again, if it doesn't show here on Zoom, I'll take a picture and it could show on that. That's a great question.
okay. Jay is asking, is it a 400?
This is it's a sandpaper. It's not 400. It feels like a 500 or 600 UART, but in sandpaper world, it's an 800.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a different approach, different. Interesting, isn't it?
Very.
Yeah. So I want this even deeper. So you can see how quickly, and I can't see my time. Yeah, good. I can make comparison studies to decide what I might want to do for a large painting. I have used less expensive materials and smaller paintings, so I can go, oh, which one do I like? Which one do I want to do for a more finished painting? Let me step back. I always step back when I'm painting. 8 to 10 feet, step away, look at it. I want to glaze a little bit of blue into this one. A little of the green for the tree. I forget the fence on this one, but that's okay. You can see here now, I'm working a low key painting. I'm not going to bring those fence posts all the way down because this is a nocturne now. So they would disappear into the dark.
Terrilynn,
Yes, ma'am.
we still have a few questions about the paper. You would get it at the
Please.
hardware store? Is that?
You can get it, but I'll tell you the hardware store it costs a little more because you can buy my hardware stores, it was like 3 sheets for $10, where on Amazon you can get it like 10 sheets for $10.
Okay, and so it's called a wet dry paper?
Wet dry sandpaper. Yeah.
Wet dry
It's
sandpaper.
used for finish polishing when you're using sandpaper, if you're doing stone
Okay.
or
So finish
fine
polishing
wood or something.
would define the grit a little bit more.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can, if people want, I can send a link to where I find it. I don't always like to use Amazon because they're so huge, but sometimes you need to. So by adding this contrast, even though that's a low key painting, and I've gone a little too much here, I'll bring a little dark back in. Now it's kind of a nocturne. You can see it, how this is just, it's dark with some sort of moon or something shining through. Again, within a very short period of time, I have a full value painting, high key, mid key, low key. And I can decide if I want to continue with one of these for a more finished painting. More questions, or because I'm going to go on? But I do, yes.
Sandpaper idea?
Sorry, again, please.
Yeah, did you just come up with that sandpaper idea? Never heard of anybody else using it.
Gee, I guess I did. I haven't either. That's a good point. My predicament was beginning artists, people who just wanted to try pastel, to not have to invest so much money to get going. So I did research on different pastel collections and different pastels papers to try to find something that was more reasonably priced for them to get used. Because seriously, you guys know, once you start painting with pastels and you get that soft pastels on a sanded surface, it's just wonderful, right?
Mhm.
I just love it. I didn't discover soft for like 30 years, under 30 years, but when I started back in college and stuff doing pastel, I had Rembrandts and new pastels on me-tent paper. I thought that's all there was. And surprisingly, I did okay then. I was also painting oil and watercolor. But about 7 years ago, when I joined the Pastel Society of Maine, I was introduced to sanded paper and soft pastels, and it changed my world. It really did. You can do so much with them. You can handle them like watercolor, because basically it's just pigment and you add liquids into that and it becomes just like watercolor. You can build it up so it has a heavy impasto like oil paint. And if you put an anti-reflective glass on your frame over that pastel painting, from a distance, people think it's an oil paint. And for some reason, there's still that little prejudice against art that has glass on it. But once they see the freshness and the brilliance of pastel, they're usually sold on it. If you've been to the Louvre Museum in Paris, way up third floor, way in the back, there's a whole pastel gallery. And some of those paintings are from the 1600s, are still as vibrant as they were when they were painted. Where oils are beautiful too. I'm not putting down oils at all, but oil paint hardens. It doesn't really dry, it just hardens, and it often cracks. And if it's been varnished, it'll change the color of the varnish, will change the painting of but pastel, that doesn't happen. It remains that as close to pure pigment as you can get. So to me, that's very exciting.
Thank you for sharing.
You are welcome. I am going to do, this is the same little tree, and that's kind of the painting I've been working on in snow. And I'm going to work with this one. And this is, I'm going to work kind of mid to high value range. You can't see my scale now, but it's over there. And notice I do always have a color wheel on my painting, even now after 30 some odd years. And I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts and I've studied master levels and stuff. I still keep that near me just to make sure. So my color scheme for this one is going to be kind of grayed, olive warm greens into your ochres, and soft kind of purple blues. So you can see I've already thought about my color scheme. And that was that second line of pastels that I showed you. I can hear somebody eating. I'm going to put you on mute. Thank you. I'm like, I'm hearing dishes. What's going on out here? Who's laughing at me?
Sorry.
That's okay. No, I love it. I love hearing. I taught high school for 20 years, so when it's totally silent, it kind of freaks me out a little bit. It's like, come on, I need some noise, and I need to know people are out there. And
You just don't want munching. Huh?
well, some things are a little distracting, but some things aren't. Yeah, it's. Now this is interesting. I'm starting on this. I started with a pan pastel underpainting and I sprayed it. I'm going to lay in some of the vine charcoal to kind of get the structure of my tree. Again, I'm thinking as I do these little branches, they're reaching up and toward the sky. They're massed in some areas. I wish I could put this up, but I don't know if my iPad will stay up here. at the same time. I'm a little cautious of putting a clip on. Oh, and my board, I haven't told you this, but I have a drawing board behind. This is a foam core board. And you could see from the other one, I will tape my paper onto a foam core board. The white strip, I use black. The white strip is to help the camera find its color balance. Because if I, for instance, if I did an all dark painting and there was no light on there, the camera would automatically make some of those areas light. So this way, my camera can find a black, black and a white, white, and then everything comes more accurate in its tone and color.
Are you using a masking tape around the frame?
This is just masking tape. Yes, I put it down quickly. I always leave an end folded so I can easily take it away. When you take the tape off, remember to pull it off at a 45-degree angle, because if you pull it this way, you're apt to pop off some of your pastels and you might rip the paper. But this way, I can use this foam core a few times. I can clip it up here quickly. And if I need to let a painting rest or something, I can take it down and I can easily put up another board. So these big clips, these office clips, work very well for that. I'm just giving you all my little secrets. You know, there are no secrets. It's like my quote from Brian Rutenberg. It's like, yeah, everything's been done, just not by you. Now, I'm already, I will tell you this honestly, frustrated by this paper. This is not the same 800 sandpaper that I was using. This is another one that I found. And now I wish I hadn't used it. It's, gosh, it's almost smooth. Let me try a soft pastel on this.
Now, are you using, they
That's
have
not working.
two varieties of fine charcoal. Are you using a real soft fine charcoal?
I think so. I usually try to buy the soft vine, or I will get willow charcoal, either one. They blend, to me, they blend quite nicely. I'm abandoning this, by the way, guys. That paper is just, ooh, pretty color. It's not making me happy. So that one's gone. There are different, and to me, which one it is not that important. Okay. Because I use it to go. A nice thing about vine charcoal too, you can't really see here, I apologize, but is that if you feel like you've made a mistake and like this, the angle of this line is not in the right place, you can just, it's gone and you can do it again. So it's great for placing your elements into your painting. Very quickly. And here again, I'm designing. One thing about a tree, I still have to think three-dimensionally. As this goes up, these branches also come out at us. You know, they're going up this, not just this way. I can't do it with my hand. This way. They're also coming this way. And you have to think about that foreshortening. Even though it's going to be mostly a linear drawing, you still want to think that three-dimensional form. Yes, the branches go this way, but these here are coming straight at us. And you want to think, so that's going to be a little thicker there because there's layers of branches happening with us here. Okay. I have laid in my drawing. I like your questions. Your questions are very insightful. Grab my pan pastels. Again, I use the largest soft tool possible. This is a brand that comes with pan pastels called Soft Tool. And if you haven't used them, these are true pastels. They're just in this form, a cake form instead of a stick form. They're soft. You pick up the pastel and then you just brush it on to the paper this way. I'm trying to follow around the marks that I made earlier. I'm varying my touch constantly. a lighter touch here, a little heavier touch there. You know, here a little, there a little. Pick, 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 talk a lot, pick a little more. Anybody get that one?
Music Man.
Yes, thank you.
I love using pan pastels. Lori got me kind of wanting to paint with pan pastels.
There's people, when you go to the Pan Pastel site or on Facebook, there's Pan Pastel pages, and people will do, okay, but they will do totally finished drawings with the Pan Pastel. I mean, paintings, not just drawings. I'm stepping back to see this shape. I want to make sure that this is an interesting shape to me, and it's broken up irregular. Anything in nature is going to be irregular. I mean, even if there's a fence and it's a perfect little picket fence in somebody's yard, I won't make it perfect. It's not as interesting that way. If you know Jen Evenhus from Oregon,
Yes.
eminent pastelist, right? Her theme is the beauty of imperfection. And I think that's a wonderful thought for doing pastel.
She's an amazing artist.
Yes, she is. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up a little pastel. That might be too dark. I think I want this color. And I'm going to just indicate, I'm not going to spell them out, but I'm going to indicate some of these buildings back here. So I just think the peak of the roof one way, and then I can just drag down the angle of the peak of roof the other way. Boom. Look, there's here. I'll finish this. House, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of there. You don't need to spell it all out. If you spell it all out, there's nothing left for the viewer to do. And we want our viewers involved in the painting. And in order to do that, they need to bring part of themselves and their interpretation into the painting. So don't give them everything. Oh, here's another Brian Rutenberg quote. The eye, not told what to see, sees more. Think about that one for a moment.
What's his
The
name?
eye, Brian Rutenberg, Rutenberg. He has a great channel on YouTube and talks about art. He does beautiful paintings. He was originally from South Carolina, outside of Charleston. Now I'm just doing the negative space around these roofs to kind of define those houses just a hint more. I'm going to step back. Stepping back gives you a more objective view of your painting. If you're on top of it all the time, it's going to be hard to see how it's all coming together. You can see, and there are some great artists, they paint from one point to another as if they're putting together a puzzle. And that can work for them. For me, it doesn't so much. I was trained at the academy to work the whole painting overall. If you saw first, I worked the dark areas. Now I'm kind of filling with some of the lighter areas or the mid-tone areas. Here's some snow down here. Boom, there, done with the snow. So that's why I step back so often. I really don't understand how people can sit and paint. Your little hand, you start almost drawing like you're writing, where if you're back, you get your wrist going, you get your elbow, you can get your whole body going into the painting, and it becomes freer, more expressive, to me, more exciting. I'm now bringing in some, I just lost my photo. Oh, that's the other tree. You can't see it probably in the Zoom. I also didn't show you this. I want to show you, because I travel and paint. I'm not in my house. I'm in someone else's house right now. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. Next week after the workshop, I head north again to Maine. So I have to be portable. And on my easel here, I have a V trow. I take aluminum foil and I make it into a V and I put it under my easel here so it catches the pastel down below. That keeps it from getting on the floor. And when I'm in my place, I can take the board off, take that pastel that has fallen down, pastel powder, put it back together to make new pastel sticks. Waste not, want not. I'm a good New Englander. All right. I love a sage green. I'm looking at those middle tones of sage green coming out at me. I'm trying to keep the undersides of these branches dark. I don't want to work it to death. I want to keep it fresh as I can. I want to keep the feeling, and I'll step back. When I step back, I also ask myself, is this creating the feeling I want? I want a feeling here of a snowy, this photo takes me back. I don't usually like working from photos, but I do. I work a lot from my own sketches that I make on location. And I often write notes in the margins to remind me the feeling that I had there, the atmosphere that was available. Somebody had spoken to me earlier about going to Lynn Acelta's workshop in Hickory. Remember that? She talked about that as well. And I think that's vital, keeping that feeling, because otherwise, what are we painting for? Are we painting to create a pretty picture? Or are we painting to communicate something deeper? This is the color I just used. Yeah. And it's okay. I mean, if you just want to make a pretty picture, that has a lot to say too. Sometimes we need that in our world today. I mean, if someone saw Yale's pictures of her, Yale Mayman, of her cats, they would think, oh, she has this quiet life and she takes care of these cats, these street cats and stuff. She's in the middle of a war right now over in Israel. I mean, I admire her, and she'll send out paintings and go like, oh, here's my cats, I'm still taking care of them today. And then she creates these sensitive paintings. If you look at the two that she had in the show, usually they're all eating. It's the perfect time to paint a cat is when they've got their heads down and they're eating. But there's one cat in one of the paintings that he's looking at the other cat as he eats, and that just one eye is focused on what the other cat is doing. And I found that fascinating, how she captured that. Behind here are some scrubby amber tones. I don't want the eye to get too hung up on those, so I'm just going to suggest them. They shine through in a couple places here, and eventually they'll be in the foreground here. Soften, oop, too bright. I could see that. See, when I held that up immediately, don't just pick up a color and start using it. Hold it there and say, is that going to work there? I say, no. That's my input on that one. So, where's my dark green? Is anybody still there? Yes. Hello.
You think black or?
This is a, gosh, it's either Richardson or Diane Townsend, and it's a dark olivey green. And actually, this is one of my favorite colors, even over, sorry, but Terrilynn Dubreuil eggplant. I know people love their eggplant, but for some reason, this olive green is just.
Was that a soft?
It's quite soft. This one is quite soft. Yes, you can see on my fingers, it's coming off pretty easily.
Okay.
But I think it's a Townsend because it has a little grit in it. You know how the Townsend pastels add a little pumice into their pastels?
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Now, as I go along here, I can start adding, I need a smaller, I need something in the same family, but smaller now. Just some more details. It's not dark enough. I want it darker. Oh, off to the side, and you can't see it, right over here. I always have taped. I moved my board, so that's why it's not available right now. I have taped another piece of whatever paper I'm working on so I can test my colors on a sanded paper there. That's better. That's a little dark. So what I would start doing here is adding a few more details. Those little branches coming out, but I don't want to do too much. You don't want to do too much of a good thing. If you overdo it, it's like, oh, if you're making, what can we be making? Spaghetti sauce or something, and you add in a little salt and you go, ooh, that's pretty nice. I'm going to add more salt and then more salt. And before you know it, you have so much salt that all you can taste is the salt. You don't want to do that with your painting. And I seriously, I have no idea why I equate food to painting, but why not? So here's some details. Notice different trees do different things. These fir trees and pine trees, the branches tend to grow off at the same height, where other trees, they'll stagger as they go up. So look at the tree and understand what tree you're working with. Strokes, I just took the edge of my pastel, I just kind of ran it sideways like this, and then I just kind of twisted it and lift. So I pressed harder, kind of lifted and twisted. It didn't come out that way, but that's what I did right there. It's not working on this paper. I think that was the last piece of that one. I chose that initially because of the color was lighter. I think we need a couple little needles up here, little needles there. Now, if BF is still on, I know she doesn't work this way. You look at BF's paintings, they're detailed. They are those glass on the mirror paintings that they're just gorgeous. They're luminous, wonderful. And I'm just saying that because I know BF's paintings. And I love, pastels is one of the best medium for each artist to express themselves in their style. Don't you think? So I tried to choose a really good variety of paintings in this show. Some very finished, some more loose. Of course, you can see I work very loose. Another great tool that I like to use is a blending stick. Folks use blending sticks. This one, I'm just cleaning it a little bit right now. So I can add, you can blend with it, but you can also scrape with it and add some variety of strokes. In my big set, I have a stick that I went outside and picked up off the ground, and it's a hard stick, and it's about half the thickness of this. And I call it my Jen stick, Jen, because Jen Evenhus, I took one of her workshops about 5 years ago. She sent us outside and said, go get a stick. And we all found sticks. And she said, now make marks, scrapes, watch. I'll do some down here, which I wouldn't, but we'll pretend there's some grasses down here. I'm just dragging this, and it's lifting some of this lighter pastel. And also it's picking up, because I had picked up some of the darker up here, it's going down in there as well. But it can look very natural, and keep moving it different angles so that the grasses you're pulling out look natural.
Do you ever use them rubber tips?
I haven't. How do you find those?
I like them for certain things like grasses.
They're good for scraping, yes? Picking things up mostly, do you think? Do you use them to like...
You can soften edges with them also.
And soften edges. Great idea. I'm following some of these natural lines that are already there. I'm not really caring this much if, like this, I needed these branches to attach to the trunk there. They're growing out from the trunk. But these are just kind of going wish-washy. They're heading out all over the place. And if you just touch, see, I just touch the edge of that stick, it can look like a branch. I just softened one end because watch, if I do this, it's really strong right there. And it's going to pull the eye down. I don't want that. So I'll just take my finger and just soften that. Now, I haven't tried the rubbers. I have some of those because when I do pottery, I do actually have some of those around. I don't want to do much with these houses, but I want to see if that's too much. That's too much like that back sky. So that's got to be one of my sky colors. What I had in the sky already is just the pan pastel. Remember when I put that in? So now I want to emphasize some of the details by putting in some negative space around here. So even though it's a foggy, snowy day, this is a great oblique strategy. Oblique strategy is another way it's a creative way of mixing things up in our mind. We get so used to doing things one way that if we can find some way of changing our practiced approach, it actually ends up making our minds more creative. So by using your other hand is one way of doing that. Drawing things upside down is a way of doing that. Mixing things up for ourselves and tricking ourselves into thinking a slightly different way than what we normally think. I'm back across the room again. So yes, it's a snowy day, but there's the sun is kind of coming down in behind, but because it's so hazy, you don't actually see the sun. It just creates a soft, glowing effect behind the tree, and it has to peek through. As Alan Picard says, you got to get your sky holes in there. Do you guys call them sky holes? I just always call them negative space. I know, right? We all call them sky.
We call them sky holes, or I do.
Sky holes. Yeah. Need something a little deeper. This is the same value as what's there, but it's a slightly different hue. And that's going to add interest as well. So in this, if I'm going to add more light to the sky around the tree, it needs to be in the same value, but a slightly different color. I want this peak guy to come out a little bit more. Kind of got lost up there. Now he looks even more broken up here. Okay, so the trunk was coming up here. I've lost it a little bit there. Needs to connect to itself. And when I'm painting, whether it's like an old tree or a figure, anything like that, I'm thinking the same things. So if you try to do a figure and you go, oh, I can't do figures, but I'm pretty good at landscape. When you do the figure, think of it as a landscape. You know, here's a leg. It's a hill in a landscape. So if you, again, do something to trick your mind into seeing it in a new way so that you don't get stuck. So I'm just doing shapes, values, and some color. Oh, I like that. It looks like fog. Fog. Okay. All right. Just drag that across between down into there. Some of these sticks in front. Again, I'm going to try to find, if I can't find a sharper edge, even though it's a round pastel, I don't know if you can see, probably can't. But there's often an edge that's a little bit of a line, like a sharper edge. And I can use my sandpaper here to define that a little more. What was I going to do with it? Oh, the sticks in the foreground. I was making this, but. And press lighter, harder, just make it different. So it's always being varied. I don't know if I want that too much. It's a little light for what I'm looking for. That could work better. Because this is the side away from the light on the tree. And then I need a long one. Something that's fairly long. I check how hard it is, if it's going to work in color. Just some sticks coming off there. Did I finish? I know I leave some of my sentences unfinished because I get painting. And if you all haven't like tried to talk constantly while you're painting, it's really interesting. So you get to admire those teachers even more. You're like, wow, they can talk and paint? That's really cool. Not that I'm great at it, but
I find that hard.
do you? It
I find
takes some.
hard to do.
Do you teach?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. And I've seen, there's a number of teachers that, yes, that when they'll get painting and they stop talking.
Yeah.
Right.
This to me is coming forward a little bit, these houses, because I have a warm tone there. I am going to try to glaze it. Almost the value of the sky, but not quite. See how that's a little deeper value? And it's a little different blue. And I want to glaze over that building to try to push it back. With as few strokes as possible. I've really been working on getting to the essence of a painting, and often that entails using as few strokes as possible and expressive strokes. The painting of my mother, I did one before she passed, and the one that's at IAPS I did right after she passed. And both of those, I found myself making very wispy strokes around her. The one at IAPS, I focused on her hands and I enlarged her hands. That's not her typical sized hand. But for the emotion of the feeling of that she did so much with her hands in her lifetime, that's what I wanted to emphasize. And then those wispy strokes created a transitional feeling, a transitional eminence of her. Is she here? Is she there? It was very intuitive and it worked for me. I wasn't planning to do anything with that painting except for myself. But I entered 3 paintings and I thought, well, I like this one. It speaks to me. Maybe it will speak to someone else. So that's going back to some of my comments in the show, is like, if it speaks to you, express it. Because other people may have painted a tree or a house or their mother's hands, but we want to see your expression of that house or your mother's hands or something. We each have something to express. Oh, now I'm getting all. My mother was my first art teacher. I grew up, she had books everywhere. And I know I learned a lot from her. I didn't study a lot under her, but there was just always an ambience in the house of art. Let's get some old man lines in there. My old man lines are just, I'll take a pastel, I'll kind of twist it and let it go and just kind of let it do its own thing. So we get some twigs coming out here. I don't like that one so much, actually. I do better if I use the side.
Terrilynn,
Yes, ma'am.
Is this reference photo from Maine or from North Carolina or somewhere else?
This is in Maine.
Okay.
I got this last summer, and again, if you look at my work, I've done this tree a number of times. Again, I'm emotionally attached to this tree.
I understand. Yeah.
You know, I don't really know why, but I really am. And sometimes it's glowing and warm and exciting, and other times it looks like this. But this, when we go through life and things happen and it touches us and hurts us or damages us deep inside, we can still keep growing and living and bringing joy to others. Sorry, I just went totally rhapsodic there, just heading off. And
What did you spray on that?
what did I spray? I didn't spray. I was about to. Is that what you're asking?
Yes,
Yes.
is it
Yeah.
water?
This is alcohol. Why do I use
Okay.
alcohol instead of water? It dries faster.
Mhm.
As you
Okay.
see, I work rather quickly. I work pretty intuitively. Often, sometimes I really plan things out. How did that work? Did that work? A little light on those roofs. Normally, I would lie this down on a flat surface. And I am going to move my iPad. I want to see if this paper, if I spray it right, if I can create like a snowy effect with the alcohol. I can't tell at this point. This is a technique I use a lot in watercolor. If any of you are watercolor painters. Again, the alcohol can sometimes push and it creates a natural texture that you might, I mean, it would take ages to create all these little dots, right? Ask BF, she probably does that. So I'll see how that comes out. Another thing I would possibly do if I wanted snow on this, or the sense of snow, is take one of my older broken pastels like this, possibly, a little X-Acto knife. This would be lying down on a table, and then you scrape onto this, and it's going to fall down here. Let me spray a little more. Get a little wet again. But see, I didn't cover it. It's kind of intermittent. So if I can reach over my camera here. So if I had a sharper tool, I could create more of this. Can you see that? I can't zoom in when I'm on Zoom. But it would be like little bits of snow falling across. And then you could put a piece of glassine over the top and just kind of gently rub it in, and it would hold that there. Pastels are amazing. They'll stay on a good paper for a long time. It stays on the sandpaper. I've been very impressed with this. And for teachers, we have teachers out there.
Mhm. Yes.
If you want to get brand new people excited about pastels, you can ask me, but I use this wet dry sandpaper and Mungyo pastels. I've done a quick color fast test on them, and they did pretty well. Some of them did as well as like a new pastel in color testing. And you can get a box of half sticks, 64 half sticks, for about $12 on Amazon. They're made in South Korea. And to get people interested in pastels or just trying it, it's a great way to start. I'm not sure if I like those sticks across the front.
Terrilynn, this is Laura.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi,
Laura. Hey, Laura.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. I populate my plein air case with Mungyo because they don't break as much as the softer pastels, and they have great greens, especially for landscape.
Yeah. And how do you feel about, because people ask me about the softness of them. What would you compare them with, you think?
Mount Vision, probably a little bit
Yeah.
softer than Mount Vision.
Surprisingly very nice and good colors.
And
right?
the price, you can't beat the price. You can get I got a full set at Jerry's Artorama several years ago for $425. I think it's gone up since COVID, but It was like 250 pastel, so it was really great. It's a good value.
It is a good value, and it's so similar in the way you use it to quality, pure pigment pastels. I'm sold on it. And for kids, I mean, as long as they're old enough that they're not going to stick it in their mouth, and beginning pastelists, I've been very impressed with it.
But it has to be the hand rolled. The other ones are not as good.
The hand rolled ones there, not as
Yeah,
good. Yeah. And so for under like $25, you can get a new student paper and good pastels to get started. And then they go, oh, I love this. And you go like, okay, now you need to go buy some good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've been recommending the sandpaper for a long time. It's a great way to just get the feel.
Oh, it is. Good. Okay. So am I still on? Okay. I'm moving that around. I wanted, because I had said I would do a little Q&A if anybody's interested. I will send a picture of the things I've done, so it'll come out with your video if you'd like. And that was quick.
Yeah.
Pastelis. Don't you love new pastel classes? And they come in and they've got like pastel. I got a picture of my like pastel all over her face. Trick to that: don't touch your face with your fingers. Use the back of your hand.
We were wondering how you spell mungo for those pastels.
Mungyo, I believe.
All right.
Mungyo, Mungyo.
And the hand rolled version of those is the suggested type.
Yes.
Okay.
Terrilynn, do you use 90% alcohol or 70?
Good question. If I can find, well, during COVID, you couldn't find the 91%, right? You remember that? It's like, dang, where's the 91?
Yeah.
Again, because it dries faster. And usually if I'm working, I work quickly, as you see, I need it to dry quickly. Yeah. I have a number of YouTube videos. I do separate what's on my Patreon from what's on my YouTube. Eventually, some of the Patreon videos I will put onto, open up on YouTube. Great. My top tier Patreon right now is really a committed group, and we're always looking for a couple more people for that. Get together once a month, and there's a little challenge, and then we sit and talk about it, and we learn a lot by talking about art with each other.
What is that website?
It's Traveling Artista. It's Patreon, and almost everything's under because if you look at my name, I had a friend when I developed my website, they're like, nobody can say your name, nobody can spell your name, you got to come up with a pseudonym. So that's why I came up with Traveling Artista, because at that time I was traveling South America and all through Europe, and I want to get back there. So I was saying, the YouTube, often I'll do demos and you can see I have a number of different processes, as someone like Laura Pollock does. Laura, that drippy painting was really interesting. That kind of stopped me. I don't know what was dripping. Are you still there? You're gone. A lot of your paintings were beautiful, and I really wish I could give everyone awards because it was so hard to choose. You're a great group and you're doing wonderful things.
We thank you.
Absolutely. Do we have any more questions for Terrilynn?
What did you use again to lighten up your black paper at the very beginning?
Yep, I used the pan pastels.
Oh, okay.
I put some pan pastels down, and then I sprayed them with my atomizer alcohol, and I use a watercolor brush sometimes just a watercolor brush to brush that in softly.
Now, is that a synthetic? Or
This one?
Doesn't
I don't know,
matter.
I just grabbed one. I have a number of watercolor brushes. My mother was a watercolorist, and but I've taught that for years too. Until I discovered sanded paper, I was back and forth between watercolor and pastel. And I
Okay.
still do some watercolor, but pastel, just wonderful.
I know that
Don't forget,
tears up the brushes.
it's just, I also have bristle brushes, but this one is soft, so it kind of glazes over the top and keeps a lot of the pastel in the paper. If some of you have not been to IAPS, don't forget that next spring IAPS is coming. We start registration, I think, is it January? Pretty soon.
November,
Is it November?
I believe so.
I have to June 11th and 16th.
Yep, but the registration comes out fairly soon. And then you get, if you want the rooms in the hotel, a friend of mine and I get an Airbnb in quite nearby. You can do that. And then the workshops and demos come up, and they're always looking for volunteers if you'd like to go and help volunteer for things. It's a lot to do.
The
And it's a
registration
great-
desk is a lot of fun because you meet everybody when they come in.
Yeah, I tried for that, and then they stuck me in with a video. you know technology? Hey, come here. Yes, Laura's going to be. You're going to be demoing, yes, or
I'm
workshop?
going to
What are you
be
doing?
dueling demo on Friday afternoon. I would love to see everybody there with Dasha Jameson from Red Rock.
You and
She and
Dasha?
I-
I love it.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
That's great. Yeah, I'll be
Yeah,
there. You know I will.
awesome.
Any other questions? Yes, and congratulations to all the winners. And those that didn't win, I mean, again, I think everybody could have. Pay attention to those details. I mean, make sure there's no push pins or edges of your paintings. You want to crop it in nicely and make sure it's in focus.
Can you tell us
Here's
a
the
little
black.
bit more about your color wheel?
Kathy,
Ca-
is that you?
yes. Can you tell us
Yes.
a little bit more about that color wheel?
Well, it's I kind of balance between the Munsell color wheel, the print color wheel. It's cyan, magenta, and chartreuse basically are the three primary colors instead of your red, yellow, and blue. But that's kind of what the workshop's about. So I do have some videos out about that as well on my YouTube.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I was so excited because last week I passed 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube.
Excellent.
Exciting.
Way to go.
Yeah.
No.
That black paper again, I had to hang a show at Mint Hill Arts, so I missed the beginning. So your black sanded paper is
This sanded paper I'm demoing on is a wet dry hardware store sandpaper.
okay. Thank you.
You're
And what
welcome.
did you say the grit was?
I think I've tried different ones. I've gone up to 1,200 and down to about 400. I like about the 800. The 800 in this is about a 500 in UArt. And of course, my favorite paper to use, and I had just won an award so I could splurge for myself, is Lux Archival.
Yeah.
If you haven't tried that, yeah.
Yeah. So can you put a link for that in the chat or send it to the
For the
sanded, the wet dry paper?
yeah, I'll send out those two, especially if you're a teacher. It's good for the Mungio
Right.
pastels and the wet dry.
Thank you.
You know, but if you're doing a quick sketch to plan for a big painting instead of using your best paper, sometimes it's nice to do a practice on the sanded paper.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
You're welcome.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions? I'm going to let Kim do another quick run through of all the, well, at least the demo we have coming up in January. So Kim, you want to talk about that?
Yes, I want to let everybody know that we got a fabulous group of artists coming each month in January. So it's very worth the cost of a membership. I don't know where you could get this many great artists anywhere for little dollars. So I hope we see you in January, and I think you will be just thrilled with what we are having. We're going to start out January 20th with Nancy King Mertz. And so I hope you guys come.
Okay. We certainly will. And thank you for doing that, organizing all those things for us, Kim. And Terrilynn, we have just had the best day. Thank you. This has been real uplifting, I think, and fun to have such a good show, and then to hear your comments, insightful comments about everything. And I hope everyone has felt the same way about that. Anyway, I think we can
Yes.
end the meeting
you.
now. So thank you all.
Bye.
Thank
you.
you all
Terrilynn.
so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.